A quick programming note before we begin this episode of Long Blue Leadership. This episode will be audio only, so sit back, enjoy the listen. Welcome to Long Blue Leadership, the podcast where we share insights on leadership through the lives and experiences of Air Force Academy graduates. I'm Navir Walkowitz, class of 99. Today on Long Blue Leadership, we welcome Colonel Retired Mike Ott, class of 1985, a leader whose vision was sparked at just 9 years old during a family road trip past the Air Force Academy. That childhood dream carried him through a 24-year Air Force career, culminating in retirement as a colonel and into a life of leadership across business, innovation, and philanthropy. Mike is the CEO of MOBE, a groundbreaking company that uses data analytics and a revolutionary pay-for-results model to improve health outcomes while reducing costs. He also serves as a senior advisor to the Defense Innovation Unit, supporting the Secretary of Defense in accelerating commercial innovation for national security. A member of the Forbes Councils, Mike shares his expertise with leaders around the world. A former Falcon Foundation trustee and longtime supporter of the Academy, Mike has given generously his time, talents, and resources to strengthen the Long Blue Line. His story is one of innovation and service, in uniform, in the marketplace, and in his community. Mike, welcome to Long Blue Leadership. We're so glad to have you here.
Navir, thanks a ton. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. Well, we're really excited. I mean, you're here for your 40th reunion.
Yeah, crazy.
You came right in, and we're so pleased that you would join us here first for this podcast today.
Right on. Thanks a ton.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's jump right in because not many people can say at 9 years old they know what they want to do when they grew up, but you did.
Yeah, I guess some people can say it might not be true,
That's
for
true.
For me, it's true, good or bad. And goodness gracious, right? As a here for my 40th reunion,
yes.
Do the math team. As a 9-year-old, that was 1972. Okay. And a lot was going on in the world in 1972, whether it was political unrest, Vietnam, and all of that.
Right.
And the Academy was in the thick of it. And so we had gone, it was our first significant family vacation. My father was a Chicago policeman.
Mm-hmm.
We drove in the 1968 Buick LeSabre, almost straight through, stopped, stayed at a Holiday Inn, destination Colorado, simply just because nobody had ever seen the mountains before.
Okay.
That was why. And my parents, mom and dad, took myself, I have 2 younger sisters, Pikes Peak, Academy, Garden of the Gods, Royal Gorge. And I remember noon meal formation.
Wow.
Right. And the bell going off, guys at the time, we hadn't had women as cadets at that point in time, running out in their flight suits, as I recall.
Yes.
Lining up, ready to go. And for me, it was the energy, right? The sense of, wow, this is something important. I didn't know exactly how important it was, but I knew it was important. And I could envision even at that age, they were doing good.
Mm-hmm. Wow. 9 years old, your family went on vacation and it just struck you as this is important and it's something that I want to do. So what did that conversation look like after that experience that you had as a 9-year-old and kind of manifested this in yourself? Yeah. How did that go with your parents?
Well, I didn't say too much about it as I was in grammar school, but as high school hit, I let my folks know what my plans were.
Wow.
And I had mom and dad, my mother's still alive. My father passed about a year ago. Very, very good, hardworking, ethical people, but hadn't gone to college. And we had been told, look, you know what, you need to get an education. We couldn't. I wish they had. They were both very, very, very bright. And so I knew college was a plan. I also knew there wasn't a lot of money to pay for it. So I'm certain that helped bake in a few things. But as I got into high school, I set my sights. So I went to public high school in Chicago. And I remember freshman year walking into my counselor's office and said, I want to go to the Air Force Academy. And he kind of laughed.
Really?
And not, well, we had 700 kids in my class and maybe 40% went on to college. Right?
Okay.
And the bulk of them went to community college or a state school.
Right.
I can count on one hand the number of folks that went to an academy or an Ivy League school or something of that. So it was around exposure. It had nothing to do with It had nothing to do with intelligence. It was exposure and just what these communities were accustomed to.
Right.
A lot of folks went into the trades and pieces like that. So my counselor's reaction wasn't one of shock or surprise insofar as that's impossible. It was, we haven't had a lot of people make that commitment this early on, and I'm glad to help.
Oh, I love that.
Which is wonderful. And what I hadn't known at the time, Mr. Needham.
You remember his name?
Yeah, oh yeah. He was in the Navy Reserves, and he was an officer.
Okay.
So he got the joke. And helped me work through what classes to take, how to push myself. I didn't need too much guidance there. I determined, well, I've got to distinguish myself, and I like to lean in. I like a headwind, and I don't mind a little bit of an uphill battle, because once you get up there, you feel great. I owe an awful lot to him, and not the superintendent, but the principal of our school was a gentleman named Sam Ozaki. And Sam was Japanese American, interned during World War II as a young man, got to of service age and volunteered, and was became a lieutenant in the Army and served in World War II in Europe, right? Not in Asia.
Right.
So he saw something in me, and he too became an advocate, and he too became someone that sought to endorse, support, or otherwise guide me once I made that claim that I was going to go to the academy.
Wow. So you mentioned something that really stuck with me. You said, you didn't mind kind of putting yourself out there and doing the hard things because you knew once you got to the top, it was going to feel really great. Was that something you saw from your father? Was that something there were key leaders in your life that emulated that, or was that just something that you always had in yourself?
I would say there's certainly an environmental element to it, how I was raised, what I was exposed to, and then the juxtaposition as to what I observed with other family members or other parts of the community where things didn't work out very well, right?
Right.
And I put two and two together. My father demonstrated throughout his entire career what it means to have a great work ethic, right? As did Mom. And, big, tough Chicago cop for 37 years. But the other thing that I learned was kindness. And you wouldn't expect to learn that from the big, tough Chicago cop. But I think it was environment, observing what didn't occur very often, and how hard work, if I apply myself, can create outcomes that are going to be more fulfilling for me.
Right. Wow. You talked about kindness. How did you see kindness show up in your journey as a cadet at the Air Force Academy, or did you?
Yeah. Gosh. So I remember started in June of 1981. Okay. And still connected with many of the guys and women with whom I went to basic training and all that. The first moment of kindness that I experienced, that it was a mutual expression, but one where I recognized, wow, every one of us is new here. None of us has a real clue. We might have some idea because somebody had a sibling or a mother that was in the military, or father that went to the academy at the time. But none of us really knew. Right. We were knuckleheads, right? 18 years old. Maybe there were a couple of prior enlisted folks. I don't recall much of that. But having gone to a public high school where we had, in Chicago, where we had a variety of different ethnicities, I learned how to just understand people for who they are, meet them for who they are, and respect every individual, right? That's how I was raised, and that's how I exhibited myself. I sought to conduct myself in high school. So I get to the academy, and you're assigned, the first three nights, the first few weeks before you go to Jacks Valley, you're assigned. It was all alphabetical, and my roommate was an African-American fellow named Kevin Nixon. All right, my God, Kevin Nixon, and this guy. He was built. He was rock solid, right? And he had that 1,000-yard stare, right? Very intimidating. And I'm this 6 foot tall, 148 pound runner, holy dork, right? And I'm assigned to we're roommates. And he just had a very stoicism or a stoic nature about him. And I remember it was our second night at the academy, maybe first night, I don't quite recall. And we're in bed and it's an hour after lights out and I hear him crying. Right. And like, well, what do you do? Like, we're in this together. And it was that moment, like, we're both alone, but we're not.
Right.
He needs to know that he's not alone. So I walked around and went over his bed and I said, hey man, I miss my mom and dad too. Like, let's talk. And we both cried. Yeah. Right. And I'll tell you what, he and I were pals forever. It was really quite beautiful. And what didn't happen is he accepted my outreach, right? And he came from a very difficult environment, one where I'm certain there was far more racial strife than I had experienced in Chicago. He came from Norfolk, Virginia, and his father was worked in the shipyards, and really, really tough background. Right. He deserved to be at the academy. He was a great guy, very bright. And so we became friends, and I tried to be kind. He accepted that kindness and reciprocated in ways where it created a pretty beautiful friendship.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that story. And you got me in the feels a little bit because I remember those nights, even, me having family members that went through the academy. There's just something about when you're in it yourself and in that moment of just raw vulnerability.
Raw is a good word.
So, thank you for that. So you're at the academy and you end up doing 24 years. I don't mean to like mash all that into one sentence, but let's talk a little bit about.
I didn't do very much. So like it was the same year repeated 24 times over. Like not a very good learner, right? Not a very good learner. Yeah.
I was going to ask, in that journey, because had you planned to do a career in the Air Force? Was that where you wanted to?
What I did, I didn't know. Right. I went in eyes wide open, and my cumulative time in the Air Force is over 24, but it was just shy of 7 active duty. Right. And then 22, 23 in the reserves. Right. I hadn't thought about the reserves, but I had concluded probably at the, maybe 3-year mark that I wanted to do other things. Yes. It had nothing to do with a disdain, a sense of frustration, or any indignation having gone to the academy, which I'm very, very proud of. And it meant an awful lot to who I am. But it was, wait, this is my shot, and I'm going to go try other things. I love ambiguity. I'm very curious, have a growth mindset, and have perhaps a paradoxical mix of being self-assured, but perhaps early on a bit too what's the word I was thinking of? I wrote this down, a bit too measured. Okay. In other words, risk-taking. Yes. And there were a few instances where I realized, hey man, dude, take some risk. What's the downside? And if it isn't you, who else? So it was that mindset that helped me muscle through and determine that, coupled with the fact that the Air Force paid for me to go to graduate school. They had programs in Boston. And so I got an MBA and I did that at night. I had a great commander who let me take classes during the day when I wasn't traveling. It was wonderful. And it was there that I was exposed to elements of business and financial services, which ultimately drew me into financial services when I separated from active duty.
Well, I love that because first you talked about a commander that saw, how can I help you be your best version of yourself? Yeah. And I think the other piece of financial service, because I did dabble in that as well, the second word is service. And so you've never stopped serving in all the things that you've done. So you took that leap, that risk. Was that something that you felt developed while you're at the academy, or it's just part of your ethos? It
developed. It matured. I learned how to apply it more meaningfully at the academy after a couple, 3 moments where I realized that I can talk a little bit about mentoring, and then I can come back to that. But mentoring, I don't know. I don't recall having heard that term as a mechanism for helping someone develop. I'm sure we used it when I was a cadet at the academy. And out of the academy, and having gone through different programs in banking and different graduate programs, the term comes up an awful lot, and you realize, wow, there's something there helping the next generation, but also the reciprocity of learning from that generation yourself. I didn't really understand the whole mentoring concept coming out of Chicago and getting here, and just thought things were very hierarchical, very, very command structure, and it was hit the standards or else. And that's not a bad mindset, right? But it took me a little while to figure out that there's a goodness factor that comes with the values that we have at the academy.
Right.
And it's imbued in each one of, service, excellence, all of those pieces. But for the most part, fellow cadets and airmen and women want to help others.
Right.
I mean, it's in service. It's in our DNA.
Right.
Man, that blew right past me. I had no idea. And I remember at one point I was entering sophomore year, and I was asked to be a glider instructor.
Okay.
Right. I'd done the soaring and jumping program over the summer, and like, hey, you're not too bad at gliding. You want to be an instructor? I'm like, okay. At the time, that was a pretty big deal.
Yes.
Being a glider instructor. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. I got to study. Like, look at my GPA. That didn't really matter. And like, I'm going to go up to Boulder and go chase women. Like I was going to meet women, right? So, but I didn't understand that mechanism, that mentoring mechanism, isn't always bestowed upon a moment or a coupling of individuals. They're just good people out there that see goodness in others that want to help them through that. I had no clue, but that was a turning point for me. And it was
because you said no.
I said no, right? And it was like, what? A couple months later, I remember talking with somebody. It's like, yep, swing and a miss, right? But after that, it changed how I was going to apply this self-assuredness, this not bravado, but willingness to try new things, but with a willingness to be less measured, right? Like,
okay.
Well, why not?
Yeah.
Trust the system. Trust the environment that you're in. The environment that we're in, you were in, I was in, that we're representing right now.
Right.
It is a trusted environment.
Yes.
I didn't know that. And there were a lot of environments when I was being raised, they weren't trusted environments.
Right.
And so you have a sort of mental callous mindset in many ways. And that vigilance, that sense of sentinel, right, is a good protection piece,
yes.
right?
Yes.
But it doesn't allow for the membrane to be permeated.
Right. Right.
And so that trust piece is a big deal. I broke through after that, and I figured it out, and it helped me. And it helped me connect a sense of self-assuredness to perhaps being less measured, more willing to take ambiguity, have you can be self-assured but not have complete belief in yourself.
Right.
Okay. And it helped me believe in myself more. I still wish I'd have been a glider instructor. Like, what a knucklehead. Like, my roommate wound up becoming one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm like, you son of a rat, you. Yeah.
So tell me, when did the next opportunity come up where you said yes? And what did that look like in your journey?
I was a lieutenant.
Okay.
I was a lieutenant, and I was looking for a new role. I was stationed at Hanscom Field, and I was working at one program office, and I was the athletic officer for the base with some other folks, and one of the colonels was running a different program, and he had gotten to know me and understand how I operated, what I did, and he said, "Hey, Ott, I want you to come over to my program." And I didn't even know what the program was, but I trusted him, and I did it blindly.
Wow!
I remember his name, Colonel Holycross, and really good guy, and I'm like, yeah, I got the tap on the shoulder. Didn't blink.
Wow.
Didn't blink. So that was just finishing up second lieutenant. Yeah.
What a lesson. I mean, something that stuck with you as a cadet. And not that it manifested in regret, but you realized that you missed that opportunity to grow and experience. And so when it came around again, what a different. So would you say that as you progress then, because at this point you're a lieutenant, you took on this new role. What did you learn about yourself? And then how did that translate to the decision to move from active duty to the reserve and into business?
It was, you'll note what I didn't do when I left active duty was stay in the defense acquisition, defense engineering space.
Oh, interesting.
I made a hard left turn. And the idea intentionally, and I went into financial services, and that is a hard left turn away from whether it's military, DOD, military industrial complex, working for one of the primes or something like that. And my mindset was, if I'm not the guy in the military making the decisions, setting strategy and policy, like I was in 03, like what kind of policy am I setting, right? But my point was, if I decided to not stay in the military, I wasn't going to do anything that was related to the military.
Right.
Like, let's go. Green
Right.
pastures, set myself apart, find ways to compete, not against other people.
Right.
I don't think I need to beat the hell out of somebody.
Mhm.
I just need to make myself better every day. And that's the competition that I just love. And I love it when it's greenfield unknown, and why not apply my skills in an area where they haven't been applied and I can learn. So as an active duty person, to come back and answer your question, I had worked for some great bosses, and they would have career counseling discussions with me. And I was asked twice to go to SOS in residence. I turned it down, because I knew. And then the third time my boss came to me, he's like, okay, what are you doing, you idiot? Like,
Right.
what are you doing?
What's happening here?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was at year 5. And I just said, hey, sir, I think I'm going to do something different. Right.
I want to take the slot for somebody else.
That's right. And so then it was 5 months, 6 months later where I put in my papers. I had to do a little more time because of the grad school thing, which is great. And his commander, this was a 2-star that I knew as well, interviewed me, and like one final, like, what are you doing? He's like, you could have gone so far in the Air Force. And I looked at the general, and he was a super good dude. And I said, well, what makes you think I'm not going to do well outside of the Air Force?
Wow.
Right. And he smiled. He's like, go get it. So we stayed in touch. He was a great guy. So it had nothing to do with lack of fulfillment or lack of satisfaction. It had more to do with newness, curiosity, a challenge in a different vein.
Right. So let's walk into that vein. You entered into this green pasture. What was that experience like? Because you'd just been in something so structured. And I mean, would you say it was just structured in a different way?
No, not structured. So I separated, tried an engineering job for about 8 months, hated it. I was a development engineer at Ford Motor Company, great firm, loved the organization, bored stiff, right, just not what I wanted to do. And that's where I just quit, moved back to Chicago, where I'm from, and started networking, and found a role with an investment bank, ABN AMRO, which is a large Dutch investment bank that had begun to establish itself in the United States. So their headquarters is in Chicago, and I talked fast enough where somebody took a bet on me and was brought into the investment banking arm, where I was on the capital markets team and institutional equity. So think of capital markets and think of taking companies public and distributing those shares to large institutions, pensions funds, mutual funds, family offices.
So a lot of learning and excitement for you, I'm sure.
Super fun.
Yes.
And so the industry is very structured. How capital is established, capital flows, very regulated. We've got the SEC, we've got the FDIC, a lot of complex regulations and compliance matters. That's very, very, very structured.
Right.
But there was a freewheelingness in the marketplace, and if you've seen, Wolf of Wall Street and things like that, some of that stuff happened.
I believe,
it was crazy.
Yes,
and I realized that with my attitude, sense of placing trust in people before I really knew them, figuring that, okay, what's the downside? I get nipped in the fanny once or twice, but if I can thrust trust on somebody and create a relationship where they're surprised that I've trusted them, it's probably going to build something reciprocal. So learned how to do that. And as a young fella on the desk, wound up being given more responsibility because I was able to apply some of the basic tenets of leadership that you learned and I learned at the academy. And face it, many of the men and women that work on Wall Street or financial services simply haven't gone to the academy. It's the nature of numbers and don't have that experience. They have other experiences. They have great leadership experiences, but they don't have this. And you and I may take it for granted because we were just, 4 years of just living through it. It oozed in every moment, every breath, every interaction, every dialogue. It was there.
Right.
And we didn't know it was being poured in, sprinkled across us, we were being showered in it. But I learned how to apply that in the relationships that I built, knowing that the relationships that I built and the reputation that I built would be lasting and impactful and would be appropriate investments for that future endeavors, because there's always a future.
Yes.
Right. So it wasn't, again, a lot of compliance, a lot of regulations, but just the personalities. I did it for the challenge, right? I did it because I was curious. I did it because I wanted to see if I could succeed at it. There were other folks that did it simply because it was for the money.
Right.
And some of them made it. They might have sold their soul to get there, right? And some didn't make it. And maybe it wasn't the right pursuit for them in the first place. Right. And if I go back to mentoring, which we talked about a little bit, and I help young men and women, cadets, or maybe even recent grads, my guidance to them is don't chase the money, all right? Chase the environment, all right? And chase the environment that allows you to find your flow and contribute to that environment. The money will come. But I've seen it with grads. I've seen it with many of the folks that didn't make it in these roles in financial services because I thought, hey, this is where the money is. Like, it might be, but you have to go back to the basis of all this. How are you complected? What are your values? Do they align with the environment that you're in? And can you flow in a way where your strengths are going to allow success to happen and not sell your soul?
Yeah.
Wow.
You said two things that really stood out to me in that. The first one was, trusting, just starting from a place of trust and respect, because the opportunity to build a relationship faster and also there's that potential for future something. And then the second thing is the environment and making sure it aligns with your values. Is that how you got to MOBE? I mean, is that?
Yeah. I would say how I got to MOBE, that certainly has, that was a factor, right? Good question.
Because the environment, I feel, is very much aligned.
Very much so. But there's an element of reputation and relationship that allowed me to get there. So now I'm lucky to be a part of this firm. We're 250 people. We'll do $50 million of revenue. We're growing nicely. I've been in healthcare for 4 years.
Wow.
Right. Now we're more than just healthcare. I mean, it's deep data. We can get into some of that later. But I had this financial services background. I was drawn to MOBE, but I had established a set of relationships with people at different investment banks, with other families that had successfully built businesses and just had relationships. And I was asked to come on to the board because MOBE at the time, great capabilities, but struggled with leadership during COVID, right? A lot of companies did. Right. It's not an indictment as to the prior CEO, right? But he and the team struggled to get through COVID. Right. So initially I was approached to come onto the board, and that was through the founders of the firm who had known me for 20 years and knew my reputation, because I'd done different things at the investment bank. I'd run businesses at US Bank, which is a large commercial bank within the country. And they needed someone that they cared very little about healthcare experience, which is good for me. And it was more around a sense of leadership. They knew my values. They trusted me. So initially I was asked to come onto the board, and that evolved into, no, let's just do a whole reset and bring you on as the CEO. Well, let's go back to what makes me tick. I love ambiguity. Yes. I love a challenge. Yes. And this has been a bit of a turnaround in that great capabilities, but lost its way in COVID because leadership lost its way. Right. So there's a lot of resetting that needed to occur. Corpus of the firm, great technology, great capabilities, but business model adaptation, go-to-market mechanisms, and frankly, environment. Environment. But I was drawn to the environment because of the people that had founded the organization. It was the firm was incubated within a large pharmaceutical firm. Okay. All right. And this firm called Upshur Smith was a Minnesota firm, the largest private and generic pharmaceutical company in the country. And it sold for an awful lot of money. had been developed by this family. It sold in 2017. And the assets that are MOBE, mostly data, claims analysis capabilities, stayed separate. And so they incubated that, had a little bit of a data sandbox, and then it matriculated to, hey, we've got a real business here. But that family has a reputation. And the individuals that founded it and then ultimately found MOBE have a reputation. So I was very comfortable with the ambiguity of maybe not knowing healthcare as much as the next guy or gal. But the environment I was going into was one where I knew this family and these investors lived to high ethical standards. And it can, and there's many stories as to how I know that, but I knew that. And that gave me a ton of comfort. And then it was, we trust you, make it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I got lucky. Yeah.
Well, I think just the way that you're wired and the fact that you come from a place of trust, obviously you knew, okay, I don't have the, like the medical background, but there are a lot of experts here that I'm going to trust to bring that expertise to me.
Right.
And I'm going to help create an environment that they can really thrive in.
I'm certain many of our fellow alum have been in this experience, had these experiences where a leader worth his or her salt should be comfortable not being the smartest gal or guy in the room.
Right.
In fact, you should strive for that to be the case and have a sense of lack of hubris and proudly acknowledge what you don't know.
Right.
But what I do know is how to set vision. What I do know is how to move people without authority. What I do know is how to resource. Okay. And that's what you do if you want to move a mission, whether it's in the military, small firm like us that's getting bigger, or, a big organization. You can't know it all.
So something you just mentioned that I think a lot of our listeners would really would love a little bit to peel us back a little bit. You said, I know how to set a vision. I know how to, I think it was move
people without authority. Then prioritize.
Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I think that is really a challenge that some of our, younger leaders or those early in their leadership roles struggle with. Maybe can you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. I had some, again, I tried to do my best to apply, all the moments I had at the academy and the long list of just like, what were you thinking? Right. But the kindness piece comes through, and think of, as a civilian outside looking in, they look at the military, it's very, very, very structured. Okay. But the best leaders, the men and women for whom you and I have served underneath or supported, never once barked an order.
Right.
Okay. They expressed intent, right? And you and I and all the other men and women in uniform, if we were paying attention, right, sought to execute the mission in satisfaction of that intent and make our bosses' jobs easier. Right. That's really simple. Okay. And many outsiders looking in, and we get back to just leadership, that are civilians, they think, oh my gosh, these men and women that are in the military, they just can't assimilate. They can't get, they can't make it in the civilian world. And they think because we come from this very, very hierarchical organization. Yes, it is very hierarchical. That's a command structure that's necessary for mission execution. Right. But the human part, right? I think military men and women leaders are among the best leaders, because guess what? We're motivating men and women. Maybe they get a pat on the back. Maybe they get a ribbon, right? Nobody's getting a year-end bonus. Right. Nobody's getting a spot bonus. Nobody's getting equity in the Air Force and it's going to go public, right? It's just not that. Right. So the best men and women for whom I've worked with have been those that have been able to get me to buy in and move and step up and want to demonstrate my skills in coordination with others cross-functionally in the organization to get stuff done. And I think if there's anything we can remind, emerging, graduates, out of the academy is don't rely on rank ever.
That's right. Don't
rely on rank. I had a moment, I was a dorky second lieutenant engineer, and we were launching a new system. It was a joint system for Marines, Navy, and Air Force. And I had to go from Boston to Langley quite often because it was a TAC-related system, Tactical Air Force-related system. And I was the program manager multi-million-dollar program for an interesting radio concept, and we were putting it into F-15s and then some ground-based situations. And there was this E-8, crusty E-8, smoked, Vietnam, all these things.
Right.
And he was a comms dude, and one of the systems was glitching. It just wasn't working right.
Mm-hmm.
And we were getting ready to kick this thing over somewhere overseas. And he pulls alongside me, and it's rather insubordinate, but it was a test, right? He's looking at me, academy guy, second lieutenant. And it was Master Sergeant so-and-so. And he's like, well, son, what are we going to do now? In other words, like, we're in a pickle.
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do now? But calling me son,
right.
Yeah, it's not appropriate, right? If I'd have been hierarchical and I'd relied on rank, I probably would have been justified to let him have it.
Right.
Like, that's playing short ball, right? And I just thought for a second, and I just put my arm around him. I said, gee, Dad, I was hoping you were going to help me. Right?
Wow.
And Mother Rat, we figured it out.
Right.
And after that, he was eaten out of my hand. So it was a test.
Right.
Right? Don't be afraid to be tested.
Right.
But don't take the bait.
You have so many good just lessons in each of these examples. Can you share a time at MOBE when you've seen someone kind of just, that has been on your team that has demonstrated that because of the environment you've created?
For sure. So I've been running the firm now for about 3.5 years. Again, have adapted and enhanced our capabilities, changed the business model a bit, yet functioning in our approach to the marketplace remains the same. We help people get better, and we get paid based on the less spent they have in the system. Some of our principles at MOBE are pretty simple, like eat, sleep, move, smile, all right, right? And then be thoughtful with your medication. We think that medicine is an aid, not a cure. Your body's self-healing, and your mind controls your body.
Eat, sleep, move, smile.
Right.
Love that. So
what's happening with MOBE and what I've seen is the same is true with how I've altered our leadership team. I've got some amazing leaders, very, very, very accomplished. But there are some new leaders because the others just didn't fit in. There wasn't the sense of communal trust that I expected. There was too much know-it-alling going on, right?
Right.
And I just won't have that. So the easiest way to diffuse that isn't about changing headcount, but it's around exhibiting vulnerability in front of all these folks.
Right.
And saying, look, I don't know that, but my lead pharmacist here, my lead clinician here, help me get through those things. But I do have one leader, right, who is our head of vice president of HR, a woman who grew up on a farm in southern Minnesota, who has come to myself and our president and shared that she feels liberated at MOBE because though this firm is larger than the one that she served as a director of HR previously, she's never had to check her six, look right, look left, and seek alignment to ensure she's harmonizing with people. Wow. And
can you imagine being in an environment like that?
It's terrible. It's toxic and it's wrong. Leaders, you're within the organization. I think you're judged more by what you don't do and the actions that you don't take. You can establish trust, and you will fortify that trust when you share with the team as best you can, so long as it's nothing inappropriate, where you made a mistake, right? Where we went wrong. What did we learn from that? Where are we going to pivot? How are we going to apply that learning to make it better, as opposed to finding blame, pointing the finger, or not even acknowledging it. That happens all the time. And that toxicity erodes. And regretfully, my VP of HR in prior roles experienced that. And I don't have time. Good teams shouldn't have time to rehearse the basic values of the firm. Right. We don't have time. The speed of business is like this. So if I can build a team of men and women that trust one another, can stay in their lanes, but also recognize that they're responsible for helping run the business and look over at the other lanes and help their fellow leaders make adjustments without an indictful comment or without sort of belittling or shaming. That's what good teams do. That's right. You and I did that in the Air Force. Yes. But it isn't as common as you'd think.
So we've been talking about MOBE and, the environment you're creating there and just the way that you're working through innovation. Let's talk a little bit about how you're involved with DIU, the Defense Innovation Unit.
Right. Again, it's reputation and relationships. And it was probably 20 10, I get a call from a fellow grad, 87 grad, who was living in the Beltway, still in uniform. He was in '05. I was in '05, just doing academy liaison work, helping good young men and women that wanted to go to the academy get in. And that was super satisfying. Thought that would be the end of my reserve career, and super fun. Mm-hmm. And this is right when the first Obama administration came in. And one of his edicts and his admin edicts was, we've got to find ways to embrace industry more, right? We can't rely on the primes, just the primes. So those were just some seeds. And along with a couple other grads, created what is now called Joint Reserve Directorate, which was the spawn, DIUX, which was DIU Experimental, is spawned from. So I'm a plank owner for JRD and DIUX as a reserve officer. And that's how we all made Colonel. Is we were working for the Chief Technology Officer of the Defense Department, the Honorable Zach Lemnios, wonderful fella, civilian, didn't have much military experience, but boy, the guy knew tech, semiconductors and areas like that. Wow. But this was the beginning of the United States recognizing that our R&D output, in the aggregate as a percentage of GDP, whether it's coming out of the commercial marketplace or the military DoD complex, needs to be harnessed against the big fight that we have with China. Mm-hmm. And we could see, we've been known about that for 30 years. So this is back 14 years ago. And the idea was, let's bring in men and women. There was a woman in our group too that started this area, and it was like, how do we create a sense of boundary spanners or dual literacy people that have experiences in capital markets, finance, how capital is accumulated, innovation occurs, but then also how that applies into supporting the warfighter. So we were given a sandbox. We were given a blank slate.
It's your happy place.
Oh, super awesome. And began to build out relationships at Silicon Valley with commercial entities, and develop some concepts that are now being deployed with DIU, and many other people came in and brought them all to life. But I was lucky enough, after I retired from the reserves as a colonel, to be asked to come back as an advisor because of that background and that experience, the genesis of the organization. So today I'm an unpaid SGE to help a special government employee to help DIU look across a variety of different domains. And so I'm sure many of our listeners know it's key areas that we've got to harness the commercial marketplace. And we know that if you go back into the 70s, 60s, and 70s and the creation of the internet, GPS, precision munitions and all of that, the R&D dollars spent in the aggregate for the country, 95% came out of DoD. It's completely flip-flopped today, completely flipped. Well, we happen to live in an open, free society. We happen to have capital markets, and access to a lot of that technology isn't burdened, right, like it might be in China. Right. And so that's the good and bad of this open society that we have. But we've got to find ways. So we, the team does a lot of great work, and I just help them think about capital markets, money flows, threat finance, how you use financial markets to interdict, listen, see signals, but then also different technologies across cyberspace, autonomy, AI. Goodness gracious, I'm sure there's a few others, right? There's just so much. So I'm just an interloper that helps them think about that. And it's super fun that they think I can be helpful.
Well, I think I was curious on how, because you love the ambiguity and, that's just something that fills your bucket. So while you're leading MOBE and you're creating something very stable, it sounds like DIU and being that kind of special employee, government employee, helps you to fill that need for ambiguous side.
You're right.
Yeah, I find that's really fascinating. Well, I think it's wonderful that you get to create that. And you just said the speed of business is this. How do you find time in your life to balance what you also put your values around, your health, and, when you have such an important job and taking care of so many people?
I think we're all pretty disciplined at the academy, right? I remain that way. And I'm very, very, I'm spring-loaded to know, right? Hey, do you want to go do this? Yeah, I want to do a lot of things. but I'm spring loaded. So like, hey, do you want to go out and stay up late and have a drink? No, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to do those things? So I'm very, very regimented in that I get 8 hours of sleep, right? And even as a cadet, one of the nicknames my buddies gave me was Rip Van Ott, right? Because I'm like, this is it. I was a civil engineer. One of my roommates was a astro guy, and I think he pulled an all-nighter once a week, right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, like, dude, what are you doing, right? And it wasn't like he was straight A's. I was clearly not straight A's, but I'm like, what are you doing? Like that's not helpful. Do the work ahead of time. I think I maybe pulled 3 or 4 my entire 4 years.
Right.
Now it's reflected in my GPA. I get that, but I finished the engineering degree. But sleep matters, right? And I it's just, some things are just non-negotiable, and that is, exercise, sleep, and be kind to yourself, right? Don't compare. If you're going to compare yourself to yesterday, but don't look at somebody who is an F-15 pilot and you're not. Like, I'm not. My roommate, my best man at my wedding, F-15 pilot, test pilot school, all these things. Amazing, and awesome, and super, really, really happy and proud for him.
Right.
But that's his mojo. That's his flow, right? If you're going to do any comparison, compare yourself to the man or woman you were yesterday, and am I better?
The power of no and having those non-negotiables is really important.
Yeah. No, I'm not doing that.
I think sometimes we're wired for we can take on. Yep, we can take it on. We can take it on. We can take it on. We got this.
For sure. Oh my goodness. And I have that discussion with people on my team from time to time as well. And it's most often as it relates to an individual on the team that's struggling in his or her role, or whether it's by, if it's by omission and they're in the wrong role, that's one thing. If it's by commission, well, be a leader and execute and get that person out of there.
Right.
All right. That's wrong. But from time to time, it's by omission and somebody is just not well placed.
Right.
And I've seen managers like, I can repatriate this person. I can get him or her there. And you have to stop for a second and tell that leader, yeah, I know you can, right? I'm certain that if the only thing you were responsible for was to help that person fulfill the roles of the job that they're assigned, you could do it. But guess what? You've got 90% of your team that needs care, nurturing, and feeding, and they're delivering in their function.
Right.
And neglect there destroys careers, and it's going to destroy the business. So don't get caught up in that. Yeah, pack it on. You're right. When someone's in the crosshairs, I want to be in the crosshairs with you, Navir, and Ted, and all the people that you and I affiliate with. But on a day-to-day sustained basis, right, to live, to execute and be fulfilled both in the mission, the work, and stay fit to fight and do it again.
Yes.
You can't.
Right.
You can't. And a little bit of no goes a long way.
That is really good to hear. I think that's something that a lot of leaders really don't share. And I think that's really wonderful that you did. I'd like to take a little time and pivot into another area that you're heavily involved, the philanthropy side. You've been with the Falcon Foundation. Where did you find that intent inside of you? I mean, you always said the Academy's been part of you, but you found your way back in that space in other ways. Let's talk about that.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I don't know. I felt that service is a part of me, right? And it is for all of us.
Yes.
Whether you stay in the military or not. Part of my financial services jobs have been in wealth management. I was lucky enough to run that business for U.S. Bank in one of my capacities. And here I am now in healthcare of service. That aligns with wanting things to be better. Right. Across any other angle. And the philanthropic side of things, I probably couldn't say that word when I was a cadet, but then, I got out and we did different volunteer efforts when we were at Hanscom Field, raising money for different organizations, and stayed with it and always found ways to have fun with it, but recognized I couldn't, it was inefficient if I was going to be philanthropic around something that I didn't have a personal interest in.
Right.
And as a senior executive at U.S. Bank, we were all, it was tacit to the role. you had roles in local foundations or community efforts. And I remember sitting down with my boss, the CFO of the bank, and then the CEO, and they'd asked me to go on to a board, and it had to do with a museum that I had no interest in, right? And I had a good enough relationship with these guys to say, look, I'm a good doobie. I'm going to be helpful in supporting the bank. And if this is a have to, all right, I'll do it. But you got the wrong guy. Like, you want me to represent the bank passionately, philanthropically, let me do this. Wow. And they're like, they're like, okay, great. So we pivoted and I did other things. And the philanthropic piece of things is it's doing good. It's of service for people, entities, organizations, communities, or moments that can use it.
Right.
And it's just very, very satisfying to me. So my wife and I are pretty involved that way, whether it's locally with different organizations, a lot of military support, the academy we're very fond of. It just kind of became a staple.
Right. Did you find yourself also gravitating toward making better your community where you grew up?
Yeah. One of my dear friends that grew up in the same neighborhood, he wound up going to the Naval Academy. So we've been friends for 50 years. We knew each other in 7th grade.
Same counselor?
Yeah. No, different counselor, different high school.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
His parents had a little bit of money, and he wound up going to a Catholic school nearby, right?
Okay.
But great guy. And so he runs a business that serves the VA in Chicago, and I'm on the board, and we do an awful lot of work. And one of the schools we support is a school on the South Side, largely African-American students, and helping them with different STEM projects. It's not going to hit above the fold of a newspaper, but I could give a rat. Doesn't matter to me.
Right.
You're
making a difference.
Seeing these young men and women, one of these boys, it's eye-watering, but he just found out that he was picked he's applying to the Naval Academy, and he just found out that he got a nomination.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
I just got chills.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It'd been better if it were Air Force, but right. But it's hard.
Everybody's happy.
It's wonderful.
Right.
Right. And his parents, his parents had no idea anything like that even existed.
Wow.
Right. So that's one that it's not terribly formal, but boy, it looks great when you see the smile on that kid.
Yes.
And the impact on that individual, but then the impact it leaves on the community, because it's clear opportunity for people to aspire because they know this young man or this young woman, like, I can do that too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he got his nomination, and so he would start technically maybe in the class of 2030.
That's right.
Oh, how exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a wonderful.
I hope he'll get it. He's a great kid.
Oh, that is wonderful. So you talk about, that spirit of giving. How have you seen, I guess, in your journey, because it hasn't been linear. We talked about how, progression is not linear. How have you grown throughout these different experiences? Because you kind of go into a very ambiguous area and you bring yourself and you grow in it and you make it better. But how have you grown? What does that look like for you?
After having done it several times, right, i.e. entering the fray of an ambiguous environment, business situation, I've developed a better system and understanding of, well, what do I really need to do out of the gates? And that I've grown that way and learned to not be too decisive too soon. Okay. Decisiveness is a great gift. It's really, really, it's important. It lacks because there are too many people, less so in the military, that want to be known for don't want to be known for having made a bad decision. Right. So they don't take that risk. Right. And so that creates just sort of this static friction, and you've just got to have faith. And so, but I've learned how to balance just exactly when to be decisive. And the other thing that I know about me is I am drawn to ambiguity. I am drawn, very, very curious, love to learn, try new things, have a range of interest, and not very good at any one thing. But that range helps me in critical thinking. So I've learned to, depending on the situation, right, listen, and then go, right? And it isn't a formula. It's a flow, but it's not a formula. And instinct matters around when to be decisive. Nature of the people with whom you're working, nature of the mission, evolution phase of the organization or the unit that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Now is the time, right?
Wow.
So balancing and fostering decisiveness is something that that's worth a separate discussion.
Right. Wow. So all of these things that you've experienced and the growth that you've had personally, do you think about, and is this important to you at all, the idea of what is your legacy, or is that not?
We talked a little bit about this beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, I got to come up with something pithy, right? And I really don't.
Yeah, you don't.
I don't. I don't think of myself as that. I'm very proud of who I am and what I've done and the reputation that I have built.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need my name up in lights.
Right.
I know the life that I'm living and the life that I hope to live for a lot longer.
Right.
My legacy is just my family, my children,
Mm-hmm.
the mark that I've left in the organizations that I've been a part of, and
the communities that you've touched, like that gentleman
Yeah.
getting his nomination.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't, having been a senior leader, and even at MOBE, I'm interviewed by different newspapers and all that. And like I do it because I'm in this role,
Right.
and it's important for MOBE. But I'm not that full of myself where I got to be up in lights. So I just want to be known as a man that was trustworthy,
Right.
fun, tried to meet people where they are, knew he had flaws and
Mm-hmm.
sought to overcome them with the few strengths that he had, and moved everything forward.
Those are the kind of leaders that people will run through fire for.
Well,
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's a wonderful. I mean, that in itself, it's like a living legacy. You do every day. How can I be better than I was yesterday? And that in itself is a bit of your living legacy. So that's kind of cool. That's really cool. Well, one of the things we like to ask is, what is something you're doing every day to be better as a leader? And you've covered a lot. So, I mean, you could probably even go back to one of those things, but is there something that you could share with our listeners that you do personally every day to be better?
Exercise and read every day.
Okay.
Every day. And except Fridays. Fridays I take, that's like I'll stretch or just
Mm-hmm.
kind of go for a walk. But every day I make it a moment, 45 minutes to an hour, something. And better for my head, good for my body, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the process in the hierarchy of the way I think about it.
Yes.
And then read General Mattis, and I supported General Mattis
Mm-hmm.
as a lieutenant colonel before I wound up doing stuff at the Pentagon. And I supported him as an innovation guy for GIFCOM, where he was the commander.
Mm-hmm.
And even back then, he was always talking about reading is leading, and none of us as military leaders. And that I can't hold a candle to the guy, but I learned an awful lot. And I love his mindset in that none of us can live a life long enough to take in all the leadership lessons necessary to help us drive impact. So you better be reading about it all
Wow.
the time. And so I read probably an hour every night, right? Every day.
Wow. What are you reading right now?
Oh man, I left it on the plane. I was so bummed.
Oh, no. Oh, that's
Yeah.
the worst.
I was.
You're going to have to get another copy now. 'cause
I
you
did.
gotta-
Before I came here, I ordered it from Barnes and Noble, so it'll be at my house when I get home.
Yes.
Love history and reading a book by this wonderful British author named Anne Reid,
Mm-hmm.
and it's I forget the title exactly, but it's how the Allies at the end of World War I
Mm-hmm.
sought to influence Russia and overcome the Bolsheviks. They were called the Interventionists,
Okay.
and it was an alliance of 15 different countries, including the U.S., Britain, France, UK,
Mm-hmm.
Japan, Australia, India, trying to thwart, the Bolshevik revolution, trying to thwart its being cemented.
Right.
Fascinating.
Wow.
Fascinating. So that's what I was reading until I left it on the plane today.
How do you choose what to read?
Mm-hmm. Listen,
Mhm.
right? Love history.
Right.
Love to read Air Force stuff too.
Yeah.
just talk to friends, right? They've learned how to read like me, so we get to talk and have fun with that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, the last question I'd like to ask you before I want to make sure you have an opportunity to cover anything we didn't is, what is something you would share with others that they can do to become better leaders? Maybe they start doing it now so that in the future they're even stronger as a leader.
Two things I would say, and try to have these exist in the same breath in the same moment is have the courage to try and make it better every day. All right. And be kind to yourself. Be forgiving.
Wow, that's really powerful. Can you share an example? And I know we could just leave it there, but being courageous and then being kind to yourself, they're almost on two opposite sides. Can you share an example where, I guess you've done that, right? You were courageous in making something better, and maybe it didn't go that way, so you had to be kind to yourself.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I think any cadet will hear this story and go like, huh, wow, that's interesting. And it also plays with the arc of progress isn't linear.
Right.
I graduated in 85, went to flight school, got halfway through flight school, and there was a RIF, reduction in force. And our flight class, I was flying jets, I was soloing, I was academically super easy, flying average, right? I like to joke that I've got the fine motor skills of a ham sandwich, right? Right. But I didn't finish flight school. And you think about this, here it is. I started in 1981. There were still vestiges of Vietnam. Everyone's going to be a fighter pilot, kill, 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 blood makes the grass grow.
Right.
All of that was there. And I remember when this happened, it was very frustrating for me.
Right.
And it was mostly the root of the major root of frustration wasn't that I wasn't finishing flight school. It was the nature by which the determination that I wasn't finishing was made.
Okay.
And it was a financial decision. We had too many guys and gals, and they were just finding, average folks and then kicking them out. And so our class graduated a lower percent than I think in that era. It was in the late, 85, 86, maybe 87. But you can look at outflows, and it was interesting. They were making budget cuts. So there was a shaming part there, having gone to the academy and like, oh man.
And knowing since 9-year-old that you wanted to do this. Right.
And I knew I wanted to go to the academy. I'm like, hey, I'd like to fly. Let's check it out and see if it's for me.
Right.
I would much rather it have been not for me had I made the decision I don't want to do this, or that I was just unsafe and didn't want to do it. The way it turned out is, and this is where I learned a little bit about politics as well. In my class, and again, I was very average. Like there's nobody's ever going to say like, yeah, I was going to go fly the space shuttle. Like, no way, right? Very, very average, but doing just fine. And a lot of guys and gals wanted to go be navigators, and that's great. I looked in the regs, and I learned this as a cadet, and it's helped me in business too. If there's a rule, there's a waiver. Like, let me understand the regs.
Right.
And I asked to go to a board. Instead of just submitting a letter to appeal, I asked to go to a board. And so I went to a board of an 05, a couple of 03s, and 04, and ultimately shared the essence of why I shouldn't be terminated from the program. And son of a gun, they agreed.
Wow.
And I still have the letter. And the letter says, recommend Lieutenant Ott for reinstatement. Nobody in my class has that letter. Nobody made the appeal. And I'm like, I'm going down swinging. And that's the Chicago in me. And that's the piece about but also strive, move forward.
Right.
But forgive yourself. And I'll get to that. And so I was thrilled, like, oh my goodness. And the argument I had is like, look, you're just not keeping me current. You're putting me in the sim and then you're waiting too long to put me in the jet. That the regs don't allow for that. And they're like, you're right. So I'm assigned to go back to the jet. My pals are thrilled. I'm going to stay in the same class. I don't have to wash back. And then I get a call from the DO's office and director of operations. And it was from some civilian person, and said, hey, the DO overrode the board's decision.
Oh.
Heartbreaking. heartbreaking.
To be so high, you did
Yeah.
all of your work.
Right. Yeah.
And then
Heartbreaking and frustrating. And I guess the word is indignant, anger aroused through frustration, in that I figured it out. I knew exactly what was happening. I made the appeal and I won.
Right.
Right. And it wasn't, I was expecting to be assigned to fly a fighter. It was like, just let me express the merits of my capabilities in how the system is designed. And son of a gun, I jumped in my car and I ran to base and I waited and reported in. He didn't really know who I was. And that's because he didn't make a decision. It was just it was that decision. And that's how life comes at you. That's just how it is. It isn't linear. So how do you take that and then say, well, I'm going to be kind to myself and make something out of it?
Right.
And he went through, a dissertation as to why, and I asked him if I could share my views, and I was pretty candid, and I just said if my dad were something other than a Chicago policeman, and maybe if he was a senator or a general officer, I wouldn't be sitting here. And that lit him up, right? That lit him up. But I had to state my views. So I knew I was out of the program. Very, very frustrating.
Right.
Could have had the mayor of Chicago call. Didn't do that. Right. Like, okay, I understand where this is at. That was very frustrating and somewhat shaming. But where the forgiveness comes in and be kind to yourself is that I ran it aground.
Yeah.
I ran it aground and drove an outcome where I still, it's a moment of integrity.
Yes.
Like I drove an outcome and like, there you go. But then what do you do? Well, forgive yourself, right? Because you didn't do anything wrong, okay? And you pivot. And I turned that into a moment where I started cold calling instructors at the academy because, hey, now I owe the Air Force 5 years. Air Force is looking for, things that I don't want to do. And thank goodness I had an engineering degree, and I got a cold called a guy at a base in Hanscom.
Right.
And this is another tap on the shoulder.
That's how you got to Hanscom.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There was a friend who was class of 83, a woman who was in my squadron who was there, grade A. And she's like, hey, I was at the O Club. I called her. I said, hey, help me out. I got this engineering degree. I want to go to one of these bases. Call Lieutenant Colonel Davis, right?
Wow.
I met him at the O Club. I called the guy, and he's like, yeah, let's do this.
Wow. I love that.
It was fantastic.
Oh, that is amazing.
So it's a long-winded way, but progress isn't linear. And the progressing through that and not being a victim, right? Recognizing the conditions and the environment that I could control and those that I can't.
Right.
Anything that I could control, I took advantage of, and I sought to influence as best possible.
Right.
Ran it to ground. I feel great about it. And it turns out to be a testament of one of my best successes.
Right. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is there anything today that we didn't cover that you want to make sure we share with our listeners?
You and the team have done a wonderful job of researching and understanding. I'm thrilled to be a grad, and I'm thrilled that I got to go to this great school, and I'm very proud to be an alum.
Well, thank you so much for being on Long Blue Leadership. This has been a true honor.
Thanks, Navir.
Absolutely. As we close our conversation with Mike Ott, one lesson shines through. Leadership is not confined to a career stage. It evolves. From a childhood dream to colonel, from Wall Street to healthcare and innovation, and from national defense to community giving, Mike has lived the Academy's values with consistency and purpose. Through MOBE, he is transforming how we think about healthcare. Through DIU, he is shaping the future of defense innovation. And through his generosity, he is strengthening the Academy that shaped him. We thank you for your service, Mike. We thank you for your steadfast commitment to our Long Blue Line. I'm Navir Walkowitz, class of '99. Thank you for listening to Long Blue Leadership. Until next time.